My name was Ibrahim. I was a Qadi in London, cloaked in the solemnity of tradition. I issued rulings, settled disputes, and upheld the very fabric of faith for my community. From the outside looking in, I was a man of unwavering conviction, respected and disciplined. But beneath the austere surface, a tempest brewed. A gnawing emptiness lingered, whispering doubts that I dared not confront. My soul felt suffocated by the weight of rules I clung to, as if longing for a freedom I could never name. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. In a moment that stretched beyond time, I collapsed during a hearing, my body falling away while my spirit soared into a realm untouched by human understanding. Darkness surrounded me, an eerie silence echoing my unspoken fears, and in that disorienting void, he appeared. Jesus. A figure of radiant light, drawing me toward a truth I had been unknowingly craving. He called me by name and spoke of a vast spiritual war, a struggle obscured by the shadows of tradition and the creeping fog of doubt. What struck me wasn't just his presence, but the revelation of a divine purpose, a truth that pierced through the heart of my cultivated faith. He illuminated the chains of dogma I had worn for years, revealing that I had been ensnared not just by religion, but by a system designed to keep me blinded. His voice resounded like thunder, shaking the very pillars of everything I believed. My mission was not to uphold tradition, but to awaken, to share the liberating truth I had finally encountered. Returning to the world, I faced an uproar of rejection from my family and community. My testimony was dismissed as heresy, my heart bruised by the weight of their disbelief. Yet I felt an urgent calling to explore this newfound faith in secret, to understand the teachings of Christ that had sparked a light within me. I sought out fellow seekers who shared their stories of transformation, each whisper weaving a thread of hope in my lonely tapestry. This journey is not just my own, it's a story for anyone lost in the dogma of religion, yearning for something deeper. A reckoning is coming, a calling to break free from the foundations of fear and embrace the profound love that Jesus offers. Before we embark on this exploration together, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Your stories matter, and they amplify the truth we share. If you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Together, let's uncover the revelations that await us. For the next chapter in this spiritual journey is already unfolding. In the bustling, multicultural streets of London, I serve as a Qadi, a role intertwined with tradition and responsibility. The atmosphere around me is charged with a blend of religious obligation and a palpable yearning for freedom, a longing that seems to ripple beneath the surface of our vibrant community. I am frequently engulfed in the weight of the rulings I issue, faced with the delicate balance between upholding the laws of our faith and recognizing the individual struggles within my community. Each case I handle forces me to confront the deeper realities of life, a reality often overshadowed by the cultural expectations that bind us. One day, as I sat in my office preparing to deliver a ruling in a case that had caused much strife among the local families, my thoughts grew heavy with uncertainty. The moment of judgment felt immense, and I could sense the anxious energy of those waiting outside. As I cleared my throat, I found myself gripped by a sudden wave of fatigue, an unfamiliar sensation that caused the edges of my vision to blur. Within moments, the world around me faded, and I experienced an inexplicable detachment from my immediate surroundings as I was drawn into darkness. What followed was an encounter that changed everything. I came face to face with a brilliant light, a warmth that enveloped me wholly and tenderly. It was Jesus, standing before me, more alive than any figure I had ever encountered. His presence radiated peace and love, washing over me like a balm for my weary soul. "You are caught in a spiritual war," he spoke softly, yet his words resonated with the authority of heaven. In that moment, my perceptions shifted. I was no longer Amir the Qadi, but a soul seeking the truth amidst a tapestry of deception that had long clouded my understanding. As I absorbed his message, I was shown the hidden agendas that governed our world, the manipulation employed by the elite to sow division and discord among communities. I witnessed the deception that masqueraded as righteousness, how political leaders wrapped themselves in veils of virtue while orchestrating chaos to maintain control. From wars fought in distant lands to the strife simmering in our neighborhoods, the revelation was staggering. Jesus illuminated the lies that had been fed to me, the thoughts that had been implanted over the years that distorted my understanding of justice, mercy, and love. In those transcendent moments, I grasped the urgency for an awakening, not just for myself, but for my entire community. I felt the collective pain and misunderstanding that plagued us, the weight of our spiritual struggles pulling us further apart rather than drawing us together. Each revelation revealed the power of empathy, a key to unlocking the chains that bind us in fear and ignorance. I struggled to catch my breath, fighting for clarity as the reality of these truths flooded my heart. How could I reconcile my newfound understanding with the traditions I was raised in? How could I stand amidst my people and guide them through their own confusion? As the vision began to fade, I sensed an overwhelming charge within me to return, to share the love and truth I had experienced. I was being called to break the silence that had enveloped my community, to challenge the ideologies that perpetuated misunderstanding and division. I realized I could no longer hide behind my titles or duties. I had to become an agent of change, willing to fight the spiritual war that raged around us. The path ahead was unclear, filled with risks and the potential for rejection, but the truth I had encountered would not allow me to remain silent. My journey was destined to intertwine with the lives of others, igniting a collective awakening that could shatter the barriers holding us captive. As a 34-year-old Qadi, deeply embedded in the fabric of my community, I often found myself embodying discipline and a strict adherence to Islamic law. Every day was a series of rituals, familiar prayers, rulings, and obligations that kept me tethered to my role. Yet, internally, an unsettling emptiness gnawed at me, a profound yearning for something greater beyond the confines of tradition. My heart craved meaning in a world that often felt shallow, where the weight of my responsibility seemed disconnected from the true essence of spirituality. While I diligently fulfilled my duties, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was merely going through the motions, caught in a cycle of routine that dulled my spirit. One fateful day, as I prepared to issue a ruling that weighed heavily on my conscience, I felt an inexplicable sense of dread wash over me. The courtroom buzzed with tension, yet I found myself retreating within, grappling with an internal storm. As I stood before my peers, my voice began to falter, and the world around me shifted. Suddenly, I collapsed, plunging into darkness, a deep void that enveloped me entirely. In that moment of unconsciousness, I found myself transported to a realm that transcended earthly concerns, a space filled with radiant light and love. It was here that I encountered Jesus, standing before me with a compassion that radiated warmth. I felt an overwhelming peace in his presence, yet I was also struck by the gravity of the moment. "Ibrahim," he spoke, his voice cutting through the silence, "you are in a spiritual war." In that instant, everything I had known began to unravel. The truths that had been hidden from me unfolded like a scroll, revealing a tapestry woven with the threads of deception that bind our world. I saw visions of wars fought not for justice, but controlled by the elite who manipulated the narratives to maintain dominance over the lives of countless individuals. As the revelations poured into me, I understood how the spiritual war was emblematic of the struggles we face daily. The deception had created rifts not just within individuals, but throughout society. I witnessed the pain and suffering that stemmed from the hidden agendas of those in power, how fear and division were wielded as tools to control the masses. Jesus showed me the consequences of complacency, the way we had allowed ourselves to be swept up in false narratives that perpetuated cycles of conflict and misunderstanding. My heart ached as I felt the urgency of this awakening, not just for myself but for everyone who struggled to break free from these chains. As I grasped these truths, I began to feel a sense of responsibility wash over me. "You have a role to play," Jesus said, urging me to share the revelation that had been bestowed upon me. "You must rise above your fears, for the truth must be spoken. Your community is in desperate need of clarity." In that moment, the heaviness I had carried lifted somewhat, replaced by a fiery determination to confront the very ideologies that had held me captive. I realized then that my journey had taken me beyond the rigid confines of my previous beliefs into the realm of liberation. The realization that faith was not a prison, but a pathway to understanding and connection. As the vision began to fade and I felt myself being pulled back to consciousness, I recognized the path ahead was fraught with challenges. Returning to the world after such an encounter felt daunting, especially knowing that I would be viewed with skepticism by those I loved and respected. But deep within, I knew I had been changed irrevocably. The truths I had seen and felt melded into a driving force within me, urging me to speak, to stand against the tide of deception that surrounded my community. The spiritual war was far from over, but now I had the tools necessary to fight back, and with the love of Jesus guiding me, I was ready to become an instrument of awakening and change. As I entered the mosque for prayers, the familiar rituals wrapped around me like a comforting shroud. I am Ibrahim, a Qadi respected in my community, dedicated to upholding the principles of Islamic law. Yet, as I stood in those sacred moments, I felt an unsettling disconnection from God, a distance I couldn't quite articulate. When I lifted my hands in supplication, my heart yearned for intimacy, but instead, I encountered an emptiness that echoed through my soul. It was as if a veil had descended between me and the divine, igniting a series of doubts that spiraled through my mind, trapping me in a web of uncertainty. In the weeks that followed, my nights became restless. I began to experience bewildering dreams, vivid visions of light that seemed to beckon me forward. Each time I closed my eyes, I was enveloped in a warmth that felt transcendent, yet simultaneously unsettling. The luminous figure that appeared felt familiar, yet foreign, stirring a deep yearning within me for understanding. It was as if those dreams were a call to awaken, a call that clashed violently with the established beliefs that governed my life. The tension between my rational mind and my spiritual yearning created a storm that threatened to consume me. One night, as I drifted into sleep, I was no longer greeted by the welcoming light, but instead by an overwhelming presence that shattered my understanding. I found myself in a vast expanse, confronted by Jesus, radiant and resolute. He looked into my soul, and with that gaze, I felt an exchange of love and understanding. "Ibrahim," he spoke, his voice reverberating through the very core of my being. "You're caught in a spiritual war, one that seeks to isolate you from the truth." His words resonated deeply, awakening the parts of my spirit that had remained dormant beneath the weight of tradition and expectation. As he continued to share, revelations cascaded down like a waterfall of insight. Suddenly, I could see the hidden agenda of the elite, the manipulation ingrained in our societal structures that perpetuated deception. The truths I had taken for granted began to unravel before my eyes. How conflict was instigated not for justice, but for control, and how technology, instead of connecting, had been weaponized to surveil and oppress. I felt the urgency of this awakening resonate within me, not just as a personal epiphany, but as a universal call to action. How could I remain silent in the face of such profound deception? Jesus illuminated the rifts that tore through our communities, how fear and misunderstanding divided us, pitting us against each other while the puppeteers of power thrived in the chaos. With each image that unfolded before me, I sensed the collective pain of humanity. The wars fought in the name of freedom, the societal structures built on lies, and the silence that followed. I understood then that my duty extended beyond my role as a Qadi. It was a mission to awaken others to their own truths, to recognize their strength and unity against the forces of manipulation. My heart surged with both fear and resolve as I contemplated the path ahead. The risks of speaking out, the potential loss of the very connections I once held dear. As the experience began to fade, I felt myself being pulled back into the reality of my waking life. But the revelations left an indelible mark on my soul. I emerged from that encounter not just as Ibrahim the Qadi, but as a warrior for truth, ready to confront the spiritual war that lay both within me and around me. I was propelled by a new sense of purpose, a determination to share the light I had received, even if it meant stepping into a world filled with uncertainty and fear. The journey of awakening had just begun, and now it was my calling to challenge the deception, to become a beacon for those seeking answers in the shadows. As I stood before the assembled audience for a religious hearing, my heart raced with the weight of responsibility. I am Ibrahim, a Qadi in a bustling London community where traditions are deeply rooted yet increasingly met with the harsh winds of change. My role demanded adherence to the laws that govern us, laws passed down through generations. But that day, amidst the ritualistic proceedings, I felt an unsettling shift within myself, a disconnection that I could no longer ignore. The weight of my faith began to disintegrate as I prepared to issue a ruling that felt at odds with the truth stirring within my heart. Then it happened. As I began to speak, the room blurred around me, and a sudden rush of darkness consumed my vision. I felt a profound sense of weightlessness, floating away from the confines of my body, and in an instant, I found myself in a vast, ethereal expanse. It was a courtroom unlike any I had ever known, one filled with radiant light and an atmosphere of sacred significance. Jesus stood before me, looking directly into my soul. Ibrahim. He called my name, and a wave of warmth surged through me. In that moment, I understood I was about to witness something extraordinary, a revelation that would challenge everything I thought I knew. In this divine courtroom, as I listened to Jesus speak, the fabric of reality began to unfold before me. "You're witnessing a spiritual war," he explained, his voice resonating with authority and compassion. "A battle for truth that transcends the earthly realm, one that is continuously overshadowed by the rigid traditions that bind you." As he spoke, I saw visions of conflict and division manifesting in societies worldwide, a reflection of the manipulation by the elite who sought to maintain control over the fabric of belief. Fear and deception were weapons wielded against the innocent, keeping them shackled in ignorance while those in power thrived. With each passing moment, my understanding expanded. I became aware of how easily the truths of Jesus, the very essence of love, forgiveness, and unity, were distorted through doctrine and fear. The rigidity of religious practices had created barriers that divided rather than united, forcing individuals to adhere to beliefs that fueled conflict between communities. I witnessed political leaders orchestrating wars under the guise of righteousness while using faith to manipulate their followers. The paradox of such actions filled me with sorrow, and I realized how far removed we had become from the divine principles we profess to uphold. As the revelations unfolded before me, a sense of urgency grew within my soul. Jesus urged me to acknowledge this awakening not as a threat to my identity, but as a pathway to deeper understanding and connection. With each piece of truth that he revealed, the chains that held me began to crumble, freeing me from the fear of losing everything I had known. I felt empowered, compelled to return to the world with this insight, to shed light on the hidden agendas that thrived in the shadows. I was reminded that my journey wasn't a solitary one, but rather an invitation to challenge the deceptions that permeate our institutions and our hearts. But just as I began to embrace this newfound purpose, the vision started to fade. I felt myself being pulled back to my earthly existence, yet the fire of awakening burned brighter within me. I opened my eyes to the cold reality of the courtroom, where the murmurs of concern surrounded me. My heart raced as the implications of my encounter loomed large. I would not allow fear to dictate my actions. Armed with the truth imparted to me, I was determined to face the spiritual war head-on, to step into my role as an advocate for change. The time had come to rise against the deceptions, to inspire others to awaken, and to reclaim the divine love that lies at the heart of our humanity. I knew I was called to share this truth, a truth capable of transforming lives, even if it meant risking everything I had built. The journey ahead promised uncertainty, but it also held the potential for redemption, healing, and profound connection. When I regained consciousness, the world around me felt disorienting and surreal. I was still in the cramped confines of the courtroom, but everything had changed. The moment I encountered Jesus during my near-death experience replayed in my mind like a vivid dream, a revelation that had opened my eyes to the truths I had long been blind to. Suddenly, I felt a compulsion to share this extraordinary experience with my friends and family, believing it might inspire their faith, or at least offer them a glimpse into a deeper understanding. But as I spoke of the love and light I had witnessed, the reaction I received pierced through my heart like an arrow. To my shock, the words I thought would bring connection instead struck a chord of anger and disbelief. My closest friends turned away, their faces contorted not with concern but with contempt. "You've lost your way, Ibrahim," one friend said, the accusation ringing in my ears. My family, once filled with love and affection, now viewed me as a heretic, turning their backs on me in shock. I felt myself pushed further into emotional turmoil, my spirit aching with the rejection and isolation that followed. The community I had devoted myself to had suddenly become a source of pain, and I wrestled with the enormity of what it meant to change, to step into an awakening that no one else seemed to understand. The echoes of that rejection haunted me. I wandered the streets of London, feeling like a ghost in my own life, trapped in an existential purgatory. As I moved through the bustling neighborhoods, I observed the blending of cultures around me, a testament to the diversity that such a city fosters. Yet behind that facade lay a deeper spiritual war, one that I was now painfully aware of. To witness the struggles of my community from this new perspective ignited my yearning for truth, but also the weight of isolation grew heavier. Each day felt like a battle against the deception that I had once accepted, as I grappled with the realization that many were still caught in the web of traditional beliefs that perpetuated misunderstanding and fear. But within me flickered a hope that refused to be extinguished. The visions I had experienced when I was enveloped in that light were still fresh, a constant reminder of the potential for spiritual growth. Jesus had shown me the hidden agenda of the elite, the way the powerful manipulated masses through fear and confusion, fostering division instead of unity. The deeper I dug into these issues, the more I understood the complexities that had shaped our society. I wished to share these insights, to help others awaken from the slumber of ignorance and find the truth buried beneath the layers of dogma. But how could I reach people who were so quick to dismiss my newfound understanding? Each day, the need to confront these challenges became more urgent. I yearned to create spaces for dialogue, where individuals could explore the layers of their beliefs without fear of judgment. I sought out others who might resonate with my journey, those who had perhaps felt the same stirring within but had remained silent out of fear. As I connected with newcomers in my community, I was reminded that I was not alone in this quest. A shared yearning for truth and connection began to blossom among us. We gathered in private, exchanging our stories and doubts, empowered by the knowledge that transformation is possible when we come together in mutual understanding. Still, the fear of rejection lingered, haunting me like shadows on the edges of my awareness. What would my family think if they knew I had found solace in a community that deviated from the traditions they held dear? Would I truly be cast out as a pariah, or could I find a way to reconcile my past with my emerging faith? Those questions burned within me, an ever-present tension that threatened to fracture my resolve. But I reminded myself of the necessity of this awakening. The truth that Jesus had revealed was not just for me. It was a lifeline for many still caught in the dark. I had to face those fears head-on, embrace my identity, and move forward as a warrior in this spiritual war, committed to illuminating the path for others who, like me, sought freedom from the chains of deception. In the depths of my spiritual struggle, I found myself at a crossroads, feeling the weight of uncertainty press down on my chest. My name is Ibrahim, and as a Qadi in London, I had spent years navigating the intricate interplay of faith and law. Yet, in my heart, a storm brewed, an unsettling disconnection from God that threatened to shake the very core of my beliefs. Seeking clarity, I began to delve secretly into the Bible, a book I had once approached with trepidation. Each word I read held the promise of revelation, yet it also brought with it a rush of anxiety about the potential consequences of my exploration. As I turned the pages, I discovered a community of believers who openly embraced their doubts and struggles. Watching their testimonies online, I felt an unexpected sense of connection. Each story painted a vivid picture of transformation and hope, mirroring the spiritual war one waged within myself. The more I listened to their journeys toward awakening, the more I recognized the hidden agenda that had kept me shackled to my past. It was as if they were shining a light on the deception that surrounded us, exposing the layers of control that the elite had woven into our social fabric. I yearned to join that conversation, but fear held me back. What would my family think? What would my community say? Despite the anxiety of potentially losing my family and cultural ties, a growing sense of peace washed over me when I engaged with this small group of Christians. They welcomed my questions with open arms, reflecting the very love I sought from Jesus during my transformative encounter. Their acceptance provided a balm for my soul and illuminated the path forward. This was where I could embrace the truth without judgment. Every conversation became a lifeline, and as I shared my doubts and fears, I felt the chains of isolation begin to loosen. It was as if, together, we were dismantling the barriers that had held us captive for so long. In those moments, I began to understand that my journey was not just personal, it was a call to something greater. The revelations from Jesus illuminated how the spiritual and earthly realms intersected. I saw how societal structures often obscure the truth, manipulating faith for purposes of control. My heart raced as I realized that the division within our communities stemmed from a manipulation of our beliefs, a tactic used by those in power to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. The truth of our shared human experience became increasingly clear. The power of love and connection is the antidote to the fear that has taken root in our hearts. As I took steps into this new life, I felt an urgency resonate within me. The calling to speak out against the deception grew stronger. My experiences propelled me to challenge unjust systems and stand firm in my faith, even if it meant risking alienation from those I held dear. I knew that the spiritual war one faced was not just my own. It was a collective struggle faced by anyone determined to seek the truth. The awakening I experienced would not just transform my life, but it could ignite a flame in others as well. And with that knowledge surged a conviction. I was meant to carry this message forward, embracing the truth I had uncovered and sharing it with those still caught in the shadows of ignorance. The journey ahead promised challenge and uncertainty, but I was ready to embrace the light, knowing that in doing so I could help others find their own path toward awakening. In the days following my encounter with Jesus, the weight of what I had experienced began to settle within me, each moment lingering like a haunting reminder of my journey. I am Ibrahim, a Qadi who once thought he had life figured out within the confines of tradition. But the revelation I received shattered that illusion, igniting a fire deep within my heart. I realized my experience wasn't just a personal awakening, but a divine calling to spread the truth I had uncovered. The path ahead filled me with apprehension, but it also stirred a sense of purpose that I could no longer ignore. With each passing day, the idea of proclaiming my newfound faith grew more compelling, yet terrifying. Living in a multicultural neighborhood steeped in Islamic tradition made it clear that such a proclamation would bring risks that I had to confront head-on. My fears were rooted deeply in the potential rejection by my family and community, who might see this awakening as a betrayal of everything they valued. Yet I could no longer allow the hidden agendas of others to dictate my reality. The very system I was part of was filled with deception, and I felt a moral obligation to speak out against the forces vying for our souls. As I began to share my story with those close to me, the reactions varied. Some were intrigued, eyes lighting up with the spark of curiosity, while others turned away, filled with fear and misunderstanding. It hurt deeply to see their reactions, but I knew my mission was not just about acceptance. It was about shedding light on the truth. I spoke of the spiritual war that occurs around us, how the elite orchestrate division through fear, and how easily we can be manipulated when we conform to established belief systems without questioning. With each conversation, I felt a mix of urgency and vulnerability, as though each word I uttered were pieces of a puzzle designed to lead them toward awakening. I took comfort in a small group of fellow believers I had connected with. They welcomed me with open arms, ready to engage in discussions about our struggles and the truths we had discovered. Together we held gatherings in the shadows, where we could explore the implications of our faith without fear of reprisal. As I listened to their stories, I recognized the common thread we all shared, the innate desire to escape the suffocating grip of deception. We became comrades in this spiritual fight, vowing to challenge the narratives that divided us, rather than uniting us. The friends I once feared losing started to transform into allies, and the healing began to seep into our hearts. However, the haunting fear of rejection from my loved ones never completely faded. I often envisioned my family's disappointment, their faces contorted with disbelief and anger at what they would perceive as my abandonment of tradition. It struck me that the essence of my journey was not rooted in abandoning my heritage, but in seeking a deeper connection to God and a more profound understanding of spiritual truth. I felt compelled to reach out, to share my experiences, but the fear of being viewed as a pariah loomed large in my mind. Could I ever bridge the gap between the life I had known and this new awakening? Yet, deep within my spirit, a flame flickered, urging me forward. The truths I had come to embrace were too powerful to keep hidden. Jesus had not only promised hope and healing, but he had also called me to action. I realized the significance of standing up for what I believed, even if it meant standing alone. The moment I had lain in that ethereal realm, absorbing revelations that shattered my understanding of faith became a catalyst for change, a sacred responsibility to confront the deception cloaked in familiar beliefs and to awaken others to the truths waiting just beneath the surface. As I carried this sacred burden, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to be a light in the darkness for others still seeking their way. Leaving my former life behind was both exhilarating and terrifying. I'm Ibrahim, and I once wore the title of Qadi with pride, upholding the laws of my faith. But after my encounter with Jesus, the world around me became irrevocably altered. The weight of tradition became a shackle rather than a shield, and I knew that in order to embrace the truth that was unfolding before me, I had to take a leap of faith. Changing my name felt symbolic, a rebirth, as I consciously stepped into a new existence as an evangelist. There were fears that clung to me like a shadow, but the conviction of my mission drowned out the doubts urging me to retreat. As I started to share my experience, I was met with various reactions. Some were intrigued, thirsting for the truth I had uncovered. Others recoiled with fear and disbelief. I found myself navigating through a landscape of secrecy and vulnerability, meeting clandestinely with other truth seekers, people who, like me, were yearning for a deeper understanding of their faith and the world around them. In those hushed gatherings, we exchanged stories that connected us in profound ways, each narrative a piece of the puzzle in the larger picture of our collective awakening. Together, we began to sow the seeds of a movement grounded in love, healing, and genuine search for truth. In these intimate settings, we explored the deceptions that govern society, illuminating the hidden agenda of the elite, I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency as we dissected the narratives that had long kept us divided, political and religious manipulations that seemed to flourish on misunderstanding and fear. We discussed the spiritual war that raged around us, one that many remained oblivious to, even as it infiltrated their daily lives. Each revelation was a call to action, reminding us that spiritual awakening isn't merely a personal journey. It's a commitment to challenge the systems that perpetuate division and pain. Despite the growing strength of our community, the fear of losing my family never strayed far from my thoughts. I often pictured the disappointment in their faces, grappling with the reality that my awakening could be seen as a betrayal. It was a painful dichotomy, my desire to uphold family honor against the undeniable truth I had embraced. I longed for a time when I could bridge the gap between my journey and the traditions that had shaped my upbringing. Each day became a battle between love for my family and commitment to the truth I had witnessed. As I continued to embrace this new path, the fear began to transform into a fierce determination. The stories of others who had faced similar challenges inspired me, reinforcing the understanding that awakening requires resilience and courage. I felt a powerful connection to Jesus and the message of hope he represented, a beacon for all seeking truth amidst the darkness. Empowered by that revelation, I pressed on, unwilling to allow fear to dictate my future. With every interaction, I touched on the possibility of change, sowing hope in the hearts of those still buried under the weight of deception. The journey ahead promised uncertainty and risk, but it was also filled with the potential for profound transformation, both within myself and the lives of many others. The spiritual war was not just an external battle. It was a sacred call to awaken and speak truth to power, and I was ready to answer that call. Years have passed since I first embraced my faith in Jesus, and in that time, I've found a flourishing community that nurtures my spirit and supports my journey. I'm Ibrahim, and I've transitioned from a solitary existence as a Qadi, navigating the complexities of law and tradition, into a vibrant life filled with purpose and connection. My testimony, a reflection of my incredible awakening, has resonated with many, planting seeds of hope in those who, like me, grapple with their spiritual dilemmas. Yet, alongside this growth, I continue to face challenges on the personal front, particularly concerning my family's acceptance of my faith. Despite the warmth of my new community, the absence of my family weighs heavily on my heart. They cannot understand the transformation that has taken place within me, one that transcends their expectations of my religious identity. I often find myself reflecting on the values we once shared, now overshadowed by a veil of misunderstanding. The pain of estrangement is punctuated by an all-consuming hope for reconciliation. I long to bridge the chasm that divides us, believing that one day they might see the truth that has been revealed to me, the truth that filled the void in my life with divine purpose. In my journey, I've witnessed how others in my community have also faced similar struggles, trying to uphold their faith while navigating a world that often seeks to silence them. Each person I encounter carries their burdens and desires to seek the truth, and together we create a mosaic of shared experiences. The spiritual war is very real, and it manifests in the form of division and deception, designed to keep us from understanding our true natures. I've learned that speaking my truth can bring healing, not just for me, but for those around me. It serves as a reminder that transformation is possible when we come together in love and acceptance. As I share my story, I often revisit the powerful revelations that came during my near-death experience, an encounter that shattered my previous understandings and opened my eyes to the hidden agendas that operate within our communities. I speak about the manipulation of the elite, how their agendas shape our reality through fear and division. Our struggles are intertwined, a testament to our shared humanity, and every time I recount my experiences, I see the embers of awakening flicker in others. They begin to recognize the narratives that have kept them confined, just as they once confined me. Through this process, I've also found strength within myself, bolstered by the belief that I'm part of something much bigger than myself. Each day becomes an opportunity to confront the fears that seek to bind me and to stand firm in the truth I've embraced. The path may be fraught with challenges, but I am unwavering in my mission to illuminate the darkness that shrouds our lives. The truth of Jesus, the love he represents, and the capacity for transformation are forces that cannot be extinguished. I persist in my journey, ready to face whatever comes next, hopeful that one day my family will join me in this awakening, embracing the love and unity I've come to cherish so deeply. As I stood in the mosque one evening, surrounded by the familiar rhythm of prayer, I felt an emptiness settle in my chest. I am Ibrahim, a Qadi respected in my community. Yet, despite my adherence to Islamic traditions, my spirit felt restless, searching for something deeper, beyond the confines of religious obligation. Each word uttered in prayer felt hollow, a reminder of the spiritual war waging within me. I had followed the path laid before me, but now I was beginning to question everything I thought I knew. This internal conflict reached a boiling point, one that would alter the course of my life in ways I could never have anticipated. The collapse came suddenly. During a routine ruling, the room began to spin, and I felt an overwhelming wave of fatigue wash over me. Before I could grasp what was happening, darkness enveloped me. In that stillness, I felt a withdrawal from my earthly form, a release into the unknown. In this space, I saw a radiant light, illuminating everything around me. And amid the brilliance, I encountered Jesus. His presence was unlike anything I had ever known, offering both solace and a challenge to my understanding of truth. "Ibrahim," he said gently, "you've been chosen to witness the truth amid a world steeped in deception." As he spoke, revelations poured into my consciousness, illuminating realities I had never considered. I was shown the hidden agendas of the elite, the systems that perpetuated deception, maintaining control over our lives through fear and manipulation. I watched as lives were torn apart by wars fought under the guise of freedom, how society had been conditioned to blindly accept narratives that suffocated our shared humanity. Each scene filled me with both sorrow and urgency. I realized the importance of awakening, not just for myself, but for all those trapped in the cycles of misunderstanding and division. The revelations came with a weight I couldn't ignore. Jesus made it clear that I was to return, to engage in the spiritual war unfolding around us. He urged me to embrace my identity as a bearer of truth, even as the fear of rejection loomed large. I was reminded that while religion can confine, the liberating truth found in him has the power to transform hearts, even the most reluctant ones. At that moment, I felt a surge of determination, a calling to confront the realities that lurked within my community, to challenge the narratives that had long held us captive. As the light began to fade and the world around me shifted again, I was thrust back into my body. I awoke in the mosque, gasping for breath, the echoes of my experience swirling in my mind. But now, everything felt different. I was filled with a burning desire to share what I had witnessed. I could no longer sit silently on the sidelines, adhering to traditions that failed to spark genuine connection. The spiritual awakening I had undergone demanded action. It was a movement not just for myself, but for my community and beyond. I stood up, redefined, ready to speak about the truths I had been shown, and determined to overcome the deception that had clouded our collective vision for too long. The fight was just beginning, and I was nowhere near finished. Now that you've journeyed through my experience, I invite you to ponder something crucial. Have you ever found yourself navigating the quiet discord between what you've been taught and what your spirit craves? The spiritual war is not just a distant concept, it's a reality that whispers to us in our darkest moments, urging us to awaken and seek deeper truths beyond tradition. The world is alive with a battle for understanding, love, and freedom, and you are a vital part of this unfolding story. In that moment of confrontation with Jesus, I felt the chains of fear and deception begin to shatter. revealing an expansive horizon of love and possibility. But this awakening is not mine alone. It belongs to all of us who dare to question, to seek, and to embrace. The time has come, my friends, to shed the veils that blind us. Are you willing to confront the fears that keep you shackled? Are you prepared to break free from the narratives that bind not just you, but your family, your community? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories matter, and together, they create ripples of change. If this testament has stirred something deep within your spirit, don't leave without subscribing to our channel, Truth from Beyond, and turning on the notification bell. The journey ahead is filled with revelations that will challenge your understanding and inspire your awakening. Every time you subscribe, you join a growing community of seekers determined to unveil the truth and confront collective deception. And in our next video, we will explore another soul's remarkable encounter, someone whose life was transformed by love in the most unexpected way. Join us as we dive deeper into the illuminating stories that connect us all. I'm Hamza, and I thank you for staying with me until the end. Remember this: the truth is a journey, not a destination, and together we are just beginning to uncover the light that lies beyond.